Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Your Voice, Your Future from our NBC studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Joining us is Dr. Ben Carson, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under former President Donald Trump. Dr. Carson, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You know, Dr. Carson, many local governments throughout the country are rolling back on COVID-19 mandates because of the issues of people having heart attacks, other issues that they found within kids. Some have said kids that even died. And this is in states like Michigan and other blue states that are just pushing back. What insight can you share with us about where we are you spent much of your career as a pediatric neurosurgeon? What can you tell us about this issue, and what is the thinking behind these local municipalities?
Well, I hope that we can learn a lot from this. You know, there was a lot of people spewing opinions as if their opinions were fact and trying to suppress anybody who had a contrary opinion. And it turns out that a lot of the people that they tried to suppress were right. I haven't heard any apologies. But, you know, hopefully as a society, we can learn from this to be more forthright and maybe a little more humble when we don't know something, and to look at all the evidence. You know, when it came to COVID, we completely threw out a bunch of evidence. For instance, Western Africa, there was almost no COVID there. Why? We should have been asking that question. Why is there so little COVID there? The answer, of course, being they take hydroxychloroquine as an anti-malarial. You know, those kinds of things could have been very, very helpful to us and saved a lot of lives. But, you know, we'll never get apologies from the people who did it, but at least let us learn from it so that it doesn't happen again.
What about the fact that Donald Trump has made it clear in his own words that he's going to allow former presidential candidate Robert Kennedy to sort of do whatever he wants in terms of sort of echoing the kinds of things that you're saying? It has many public health officials very concerned of the possibility that the member of the Kennedy dynasty could have a very heavy hand when it comes to this issue. What is it that Robert Kennedy is trying to say, and what is it that the president would actually want to do in this area, Dr. Carson?
Well, he wants to emphasize the importance of preventive care. You know, there are a lot of things that are going on in our society that don't need to be going on, particularly the obesity epidemic and all the things that are domino effects from that. And he just wants us to look at how we can eat healthier, how we can live healthier, integrating exercise into our routines, a whole host of things that we've always known were helpful but didn't have the will to pursue. And obviously those things would be done on a voluntary basis. And people would be allowed to observe the difference between those who live in a way that's healthy and those who do not.
You know, you are obviously a very close friend and confidant of the president-elect. You spent 4 years in his cabinet. You've seen him come back from the darkness and back into the light, and now he's president again. How will this Donald Trump, Dr. Carson, different from the Donald Trump of the past?
Well, this Donald Trump has a lot more experience, firsthand knowledge of how Washington works and what kind of people are trustworthy and what kind of people should be looked at with a jaundiced eye. And I think that will make a very big difference. He also has established a lot of allies in different places who I think will be very helpful to him. He knows who his friends are, and he knows who are not his friends. And I think that will make a huge difference.
When you talk to the former president, what is it that you take from the recent landslide mandate across the board, not just his base, but he expanded his base with Latinos, with women, with black men, with Arabs, people who are working class. What do you think the American people is telling President-elect Trump what they would like for him to do. What is that message?
They are saying they like the idea of common sense. I was in Europe last year and I was talking to a bunch of the Europeans and I said, what do you think of America? And they said, we think you've lost your minds. Well, that's a good reason for people to think that, men and women sports, all this transgender stuff, letting criminals out, letting people go into stores and just take $900 worth of stuff without any criminal activity being attached to it. There's so many things also on the international front. The world's sort of coming apart. And people are just saying, could we just have a little bit of order in our lives again? That's all they want.
Dr. Carson, what about the president has spoken repeatedly about healing, unifying. Some people have considered him to be a divisive force with his rhetoric and the things that he has said and the examples that he has set. What do you expect the president to do now that he's a lame duck president? He has a Republican Congress, a Republican Senate, and the American people fully behind him. How do you think, and what do you recommend that he does to sort of start healing the wounds that the media has led us to believe that America's divided? But if you look at the way Americans vote, it doesn't necessarily measure up that America's as divided as we're told we are.
That's correct. Well, he's a very nice person when he's not being attacked. But when is that? And hopefully the media will slow down on their attacks. Since he's not going to be able to run again, maybe they won't have as much to gain in trying to attack him, and might even want to work with him a little bit, recognizing that we as a nation, have much more in common with each other than the things that separate us. We're not each other's enemies. And I think that's a message that he will carry forth, because he doesn't need, he's not going to run again, so he doesn't really need that platform. And I think he'll be able to concentrate much more on the things at hand.
Now, we've talked about what the media and others should do to help in the healing, but what is it that the president-elect himself can do, Dr. Carson?
Well, he can put a lot of faith in the God who saved him twice from assassination and all kinds of things that others were trying to do to him, ruin him financially, put him in jail, just make his life miserable. He can sort of put those things behind him. At some point, someone has to be the adult in the room. It can't continue to be tit for tat, or we'll never make any progress.
You hinted a few minutes ago when you were speaking about transgenderism, biological men playing women's sports, and what you're talking about that is often overlooked in this election. It's easy to talk about the economy and to talk about foreign wars and to talk about the border crisis. But I think what you're alluding to here is that many people are voting to restore family values and civics to our culture, Dr. Carson.
Yes, I mean, it's been a rapid progression, from traditional American families and the values that they pose to something that's barely recognizable, and it's gone at lightning speed. Now, you might be surprised to know that the underpinnings for such a change have been in place for a long time. And if you read the congressional record, January 10, 1963, Congressman Herlong of Florida read into it 45 goals of communism in America. And it's much of the stuff that we're seeing now, but it needed an opportunity to express itself. And, the Biden-Harris administration provided that opportunity.
Dr. Carson, don't you think, President Biden has extended the olive branch and will meet with former President Donald Trump on Wednesday, and Nancy Pelosi, Vice President Harris, and Hillary Rodham Clinton have all said, and even former President Barack Obama, even though it's not the outcome that we wanted, Donald Trump is our president. Let's rally behind him. Let those that supported us and are disappointed and saddened by the results rally behind our president, because we're not loyal to one person. We're loyal to our Constitution. Doesn't that give the former president and yourself encouragement that maybe America can find a place to find common ground?
I would much rather they say that than they not say it, but I'll be much more impressed when I see what the actions are.
Explain, you think these are just words and the actions could be something totally different? This is what they have to say to give this appearance to the public. This is who they are. Are you saying you don't trust that to be what their long-term game is?
Well, let's put it this way. You tend to base what people's futures are on their past. What have they done in the past? And if they've made a change, you'd like to see it. And that's what I'm saying. I want to see the change. I don't want to just hear about it.
But isn't it in your faith that it's all about redemption and that we all can find our better angels, and no matter what we may have been in the past, that sometimes we can have an epiphany and it becomes crystal clear that this chaos is not good for the future of America?
But there's no question that we, the American people, are not each other's enemies. And you can take the most radical left-wing person and the most radical right-wing person, and they're going to agree on 80% of stuff. But we let other agencies take that 20% and just stir the pot until we think that we're each other's enemies. And we have to be smart enough to realize that there are forces of Marxism and other things that thrive on dividing the population against each other.
Dr. Ben Carson is our guest, former Secretary for HUD and Urban Development, a very close confidant to President-elect Donald Trump. We'll come back with some final thoughts. I'm Armstrong Williams here in Las Vegas. Your voice, your future. And welcome back to Your Voice, Your Future. I'm Armstrong Williams on this Monday, November 11th, Veterans Day. Dr. Carson, before we get back to politics, what about our veterans and this day, remembering them in their sacrifice?
Well, it's so important that we honor our veterans, recognizing that 1% of our population provides the freedom for the other 99%. So whenever we see one of them, we should thank them, because what a sacrifice. Many of them life and limb to preserve our freedom, and we should never forget that.
How do you interpret the current identity of the Grand Old Party? And do you feel the party is evolving to meet new cultural and social challenges, or is it struggling to find a cohesive direction, Dr. Carson?
Well, it's interesting because it used to be that people perceived the Republicans as the party of the rich, the party of the elite, the party of Wall Street. And now that seems to be the Democrats. And, you know, when Donald Trump does these rallies, you see the common people out there, the workers. The whole thing is kind of flipped upside down. And I'll say, you know, from my own experience, you know, I grew up as a Democrat, and the Democratic Party today is very different than the one that I grew up with. And, but, you know, I really think we need to get sort of away from party identification and ask ourselves, do we believe in the American system? Do we believe in capitalism? Do we believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that our rights come from our Creator? Or are we something else? Are we going to fundamentally change into another type of society? It's much more about that than it is about Democrats and Republicans.
You know, during your tenure at HUD, Dr. Carson, you focus on housing and economic initiatives. What key policy areas of reform would you like to see this administration pursue, especially, I know you care so much about these underserved communities?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things we could do is remove the penalties in people who are receiving housing assistance. For instance, if you're getting a housing subsidy and you get a raise on your job, you must report that immediately so that your rent can go up. Well, that's not a great incentive for improving yourself. Or if you bring someone else under the roof who has an income, your rent goes up. And those are not things that are conducive to family togetherness and formation. So these are things that I think could make a big difference if we work at enhancing the programs that encourage self-sufficiency.
So many Americans, Dr. Carson, feel so disillusioned with government institutions. The reason why so many Americans don't go out and vote, because the promises that were made did nothing to enhance their lives. In fact, they would say their situation has gotten worse. So many people will say, well, what do I vote for? And what role do you see this government and this administration, and yourself included, in sort of helping to restore that trust in government? I know you do that often now through your foundation. And do you intend to bridge gaps across all these political and geographical divides?
One of my goals is WANE, W-A-N-E. We are not enemies. Helping people to understand we've allowed hatred and division to wax. Now it's time to let it wane. And, that can only benefit us as a nation. There's nothing to be gained by us fighting each other and trying to destroy each other.
Dr. Carson, we're discussing here about what government can do to enhance people's lives. But there's so much that people can still do for themselves, so government can do a better job in providing for them. And it doesn't have to be permanently, it can just be temporarily.
Is there a question in there?
Yes. What is that people can do in their own lives?
Well, first of all, they can pray, and they can try to lead a life that is positive in their sphere of influence. People should go away when they're talking to you uplifted, not depressed. Everybody has the ability to do that. It's a choice. Do you want to be a nasty person who creates friction, or do you want to be a nice person who creates harmony? You have that choice. And if you're not that kind of a person, a harmonious person, try it for a couple of days and see what a difference it makes in your life.
Dr. Carson, I'm going to go back to the elections. Even you probably was a little surprised at how resounding the defeat was for the Democrats and their ideology and their wokeness and their progressiveness. And Democrats are trying to gather over the shot to learn lessons from what the voters were telling them. If you were in the room with them, what would you tell them that they need to do different?
I would say you need to look in the mirror and see who you are and what you're advocating and what you're supporting, and ask yourself, am I really for that? Or am I just going along with the crowd? Because you have to realize this is America. This is a nation that has a Judeo-Christian foundation. And when you do things that destroy the traditional nuclear family, when you turn the television on and all you see are alternatives to the nuclear family, not only as acceptable, but as perhaps even preferable these days, when you see sexual deviation elevated and praised, when you see children being confused about their gender, those are things that are destructive to a society. And people are simply tired of it. They don't want it anymore. They don't want to stop people who want to do something alternatively, but they don't want the whole society to change because of the habits of a few people.
You know, you've covered this country, the nation's capital. You've lived here extensively. Do you see a genuine shift in the GOP towards a more populist approach? Or is this more of a temporary adjustment, Dr. Carson, to the current political winds?
I think it's going to depend on what gets done. If Donald Trump is able to do the things that he has promised to do successfully, I think it will result in a significant cultural change. If he's not, we're going to go back to fighting each other again.
How do you think the GOP stance on issues like immigration and education performance impact its broader political identity? And being an educator yourself and the founder of Carson Scholars, do you think they should move to abolish the Department of Education?
Well, they certainly should provide more autonomy, I think, for the states and for local governments when it comes to education, and they need to promote school choice. That's going to be the thing that makes the difference. If people have the option of sending their child to a school that's going to teach them where they're going to achieve versus one that's going to make them woke, I think that's fair. Give them a choice and see where they go.
Dr. Carson, if asked by your friend and the former president to return to a cabinet advisory role, would you at this stage accept and return to government?
Well, I'm definitely going to be helping in some capacity. And that's be working out exactly what capacity that is. But, you know, my goal is to help our nation to be fair, equal, and just to everybody. And let us be happy with each other again and not continue down this road of hatred and division.
Could you discuss briefly what you're involved in now that helping you carry out those goals and make America a better place, especially our younger generation?
Well, thanks for asking that question. I'm heading up the American Cornerstone Institute, which focuses on the cornerstone principles that made us into a great nation. That would be faith, liberty, community, and life. And we also have a Little Patriots program, which focuses on the children and teaching them what our values are and what our history is, all of our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there's a lot more good than there is bad and ugly. We just need to help them to appreciate the exceptional place that this country is and how they can get involved in making it even better. And we have many programs. They're all free of charge. AmericanCornerstone.org.
That's American Cornerstone and Little Patriots. And finally, Dr. Carson, as we say goodbye to you and get ready for our panel, what advice would you give to the fourth estate, the mainstream media?
I would say, remember that the press is the only business protected by our Constitution. And the reason for that is because they're supposed to disseminate unbiased information to the people so that the people could make a decision on how they wanted the country to be run. And when you put your thumb on the scale, or in the case of the way we are now, your foot on the scale, it distorts the information and it distorts the results. You can be a very righteous profession, once again, highly admired, if you'll be objective and treat the people as equals and not as your inferiors.
Dr. Carson, Donald Trump is president again. People are still grappling with that fact.
I think I think probably even some Democrats, they won't admit it. I think they're happy because they see some stabilization coming, not only in our country, but around the globe.
Dr. Ben Carson, American Cornerstone, Little Patriots, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and we look forward to seeing what role you will play and this second term of Donald Trump. More with my panel. This is Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall. I'm Armstrong Williams, live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Joining us now in studio is Sigal Chattah, Nevada RNC Committeewoman, and via Zoom we have Luis Martinez, a Washington correspondent for NTD. Let me thank you both for joining us. Let us start with you. Wow, it was razor, but Donald Trump won Nevada. 90% of the precincts have been counted. Once those votes are counted, would anything change?
Now that the votes are counted, I don't think anything's going to change. Donald Trump won Nevada by the number that I thought that he would win, which was 1 to 3% ahead of Kamala Harris. So we're very happy with that.
Why didn't she win here?
Well, because I think, look, Nevada is a blue-collar state. I think they overplayed the abortion card way too much. Here in Nevada, abortion is legal up to 24 weeks. And I think women were thinking I buy eggs and milk much more than I'm likely to have an abortion. And it was all about the economy. And Nevada, I have said this over and over throughout this whole race, was that Nevada suffered from 21 to 22% inflation at times. And we had the highest inflation in the country. We had the highest unemployment rate in the country. And so these are kitchen table issues that really resonated with Nevada voters.
But you know what's fascinating is that the Democrats once owned these issues. They once owned the voters' concerns about these issues. What changed and when did it change? Because it seems as though the GOP is becoming the old Democratic Party.
You're right. You're right. It does seem like the GOP is becoming the old Democratic Party. And I think really what's happening is you're seeing as the Democratic Party is shifting left to issues that don't matter as kitchen table items. And I think what you're seeing is the Republican Party has stepped up to the populist party. This is why Trump resonates so well with the populist demographic, whether it was women, whether it was millennials, whether it was the new up-and-coming Gen Z voters. I mean, these are people that want opportunities. These are people that want to buy homes. And I think what Trump tapped into was that hunger for the American dream that the Democratic Party has long left behind.
You know, Louis, let me tell you what really actually shocked me and many others was the fact that, and I know the vice president meant this as a message of healing. She placed so much emphasis on people like Trump's former chief of staff, Kelly, Liz Cheney, parading around the country with her Vice President Cheney's endorsement, as if she was going to get a significant among GOP and Republicans who would defect from the party to vote for her. In fact, she got less than Hillary Clinton. She got less than Joe Biden. That strategy, Louis, just did not work.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence, there's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
So here's the thing. The reality of it is that Liz Cheney is a multi-millionaire that made money off of wars. Americans are sick of wars. You know, women are sick of wars. Women want to feed their children with dignity. They want jobs that will pay. They don't care about a war on the other side of the country where companies like Lockheed and Raytheon and Boeing are making all these profits at the expense of the American worker, and nobody cares about that anymore.
Listen, Sigal, not to win one battleground state. I mean, come on, I'm sure that shocked you. Come on now.
Look, I mean, I honestly, I thought, I
Not
knew Nevada
one.
was going to be tight. But that is the American worker and the American voter speaking to our government and our leadership. Because at the end of the day, again, what we're seeing is, look, Americans are taking over the government, and that's a beautiful thing. I think that is truly the American worker having that power is a beautiful thing. I think that, giving the power back to the people, that's what our republic is about. It's not about the elite.
Let me tell you this, because it's just shocked me, actually. So I arrived here Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to go out and canvass Nevada, from people on the streets to people in these fancy hotels with businesses, and I'm going to just ask the question. And, about the fact that Donald Trump won. I must tell you, I did not find one person who was not happy, even those who supported. Vice President Harris said to me, after I think about it, the right person won. I mean, you would think, there is a warmth, there's a calmness, there's a feeling that for some reason Americans believe, whether they voted for him or not, they have the right person in the White House.
Absolutely, especially if you're here in Las Vegas and you're doing it. Remember, Las Vegas is a heavy tip industry population. So when he came out with no tax on tips, of course the worker was going to vote for that. Why wouldn't the worker vote for that? I mean, we're talking about kitchen table items. Look, I'll tell you again, I'm a single mom. The only thing that mattered to me was safety and a good economy. And think of every single mother like me, that's all they want. They want the best education for their children. They want to be able to afford to feed their children. And at the end of the day, they want safety for their children. Nobody cared about abortion in Nevada. It was overplayed.
Given Nevada's has a very unique economy here, you just mentioned it. What are your thoughts on how the GOP can better align its policies to meet the needs of, let's say, working class voters?
Look, at the end of the day, I think the GOP, the Nevada GOP, performed excellent here because of the fact that we accepted that Nevada is a tip-heavy industry and we are for the working people. Okay, Nevada GOP is, and here's the secret sauce that we came up with this recent election year, is that the Nevada GOP is a populist movement. It is not run by political consultants. We have managed to basically get rid of the political consultants in the GOP, and it is the grassroots, and that is where the American worker, you see the passion and the fervor of the American worker in that.
You know what has not been mentioned? I've not read anything. You remember when Romney was chairman of the RNC?
Yes.
And Trump let her go because of her dismal results for the midterm elections? Jamie Harrison, who's chairman of the DNC's results were atrocious.
Abysmal.
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 Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And no one, and handpicked by Jim Clyburn, okay, who credits himself for Joe Biden being president.
Yep.
But obviously there's going to be a reckoning inside the Democratic Party?
Well, one thing I will tell you that exists in the Democratic Party, and I'm always jealous of that, is the fact that no matter how much Democrats fail, they're constantly pushing each other up. In the Republican Party, there are so many daggers and backstabbers that exist in the Republican Party that it's something that, I don't know if it is this sense of loyalty in the Democratic Party where you could basically take somebody that has a pulse and elevate them throughout, politics, as opposed to Republicans. I think Republicans are constantly looking for a more merit-based system. So I don't know.
Help us with this. This is just a fact. I mean, the vice president in her campaign had $1 billion. $1 billion. They're $20 million in debt. Cannot pay their campaign workers. They had Beyonce, they had Taylor Swift, they had Katy Perry, they had LeBron James, and she assumed that they would bring in the younger generation to tip this election to almost a landslide. She spent literally $300 million on social media. $300 million.
It's a lot of money.
Oh, I was at the Democratic convention. These influencers and this social media group had the highest piece of real estate, the best piece of real estate at the Democratic convention. In fact, the old guard was angry because they were arrogant and would thumb their nose in their faces, and yet she has nothing to show for that investment. Who was advising her?
I don't know who was advising her, maybe George Clooney, but, now it's funny to watch the meltdown. I don't think that, 20-year-olds that can't pay rent because of a housing crisis really gave any credence to Beyonce and LeBron and whoever, Katy Perry and whoever else they rolled out, because how could you? How could you, as a Hollywood elite, come and tell a 23-year-old that can't even pay rent that she's going to make things better? She might have made things better for Hollywood, but she certainly did not have a message of how she was going to make things better for that demographic of 18 to 25 or 18 to 34. There was no message.
Did you hear her former communications director saying that Joe Biden should resign so he
Horrifying.
can listen, you can't make this up. Wait a minute, you can't make this up. Resign so you can honor your promise to make the first woman president, so she will not have to certify the election for Donald Trump. Did you hear? It was just absolute. What is going on? Is it the water? Is it the air?
It's a complete and utter meltdown, from calling on Joe Biden to resign to Sotomayor to retire. Justice Sotomayor, look, and Sotomayor comes from, I would say, a much more left demographic than where I sit, okay? But respect to a Supreme Court justice is an utmost.
No, that's desperation.
It's what they're doing here is they are literally trying to attach, to rearrange the seating on the Titanic. That's going down. And they're trying to do whatever it takes just to have another justice appointed by Biden, which is they're playing with fire on that.
Well, Biden's not going to step down.
No, well, Biden's not going to step down, and I have to tell you, neither is Sotomayor. And the lack of respect for these institutions is appalling.
It's worse than that. I think they're just so blind. They're so traumatized. We can see them playing out therapy right in public. The meltdown. We got to come back and talk about the media. We got to talk about Joe Biden. We really have not talked about the vice president. We got to talk about Congress and whether the Republicans are going to get the House, and what do they do with it now that it's a trifecta, and that could be a double-edged sword. You and I have so much to talk about. Don't go away. This is Your Voice, Your Future, live from Las Vegas, Nevada.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
And welcome back. I'm Armstrong Williams, your voice, your future. Joining me in studio still is Sigal Chattah, Nevada RNC Committeewoman. And, you know, listen, let's look at this before we get into all the other things I mentioned as we were going out to break. You know, the waste and win campaigns and the rhetoric, no matter how divisive and whatever it is, it's not the way they govern. The fact that former President Donald Trump is historic. He gets a chance to complete his term of the presidency. It's one thing to campaign, Sigal. It's another thing to govern. Deporting so many people out of this country, turning this economy around for the American people, ending the conflict in Gaza, ending the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. I mean, the Biden administration has left him with a lot of challenges. How does he govern? And many people won't see him as having an excuse because he will have the Senate and the House. The American people gave him everything he wants. What does he do with it that will satisfy them? And so they begin to see immediately that they made the right decision.
Look, I think what he does is, you know, success is the cumulative effort of many small steps, right? We start 1 foot forward. And for example, the economy, he's going to have to start with the energy sector. And the energy sector is the most important thing. Because once we get the energy sector fixed, you'll see that the prices are going to come down. I mean, the inflation is going to come down.
Supply chain.
Yes, it will. You know, there's going to be this domino effect, really, of the, you know, many of the campaign promises will be resolved at almost immediately because of the energy sector, whether it's gas, whether it's household items. So that's going to be the first part. Now, security is mutually exclusive over economy, right? So security is going to have to do. Look, he just appointed Tom Homan for you know, DHS, and that is amazing. Actually, I think he appointed him for the border security. Right.
And he's a beast.
And he's a beast,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so that's, you know, that is, you know, so important. And so you're going to see security in our streets, safety in our streets comes from that deportation issue. And look, Arizona and California, Nevada is smack dab between two border states. So I know that we're going to see a decrease in crime here in Nevada as well from that.
You know, one of the things, I remember John Cornyn, who's being considered to replace Mitch McConnell along with a few others. I remember him saying about Donald Trump is that Donald Trump problem for the GOP is that he cannot expand beyond his base. Well, let me tell you this.
He proved him wrong, right?
He did.
He proved him wrong. He proved him wrong tenfold. He expanded beyond his base in absolutely every demographic, whether it was the white male voter, the female voter, whether it was Hispanics, African Americans, Arabs. I mean, you know, and at the end of the day, it's funny because I was actually talking to Congressman Abe Hamadeh last night and about the Arab vote. And, you know, one of the things that we were talking about is, look, under President Trump, okay, even with all the inflammatory issues that we've had to deal with here in the United States between Gaza and Israel and everything, the Arabs know that under Donald Trump, they will have an opportunity for peace and prosperity even in Gaza. And I think that's how he captivated the Arab vote.
This is a difficult question. What is Joe Biden's legacy?
That is a difficult question. You know, I think the worst economy in U.S. history. I mean, I don't know. God, lack of safety, wokeness. That's a very hard question. What is Joe Biden's legacy? Starting wars. I mean, everything that has happened in the Middle East. Look, the Middle East.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. I mean, yeah.
You're really struggling here.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think
I've got nothing for you.
So
I've
what-
got nothing for you on the legacy.
So what is Vice President Kamala Harris's legacy?
I don't think she has any legacy other than destruction and aiding and abetting to that destruction. I mean, that's really, the jury's still out on who's been running the country.
Would there have been a difference had she been involved in a primary?
I don't think she would have won that primary, if anything, because look, in 2020, I mean, Democrats thumbed their nose at her 4 years ago. So what would have changed? I don't think she's made any resounding strides in the party that would have delivered a Kamala Harris win.
What are your thoughts on President Trump talking to the GOP to bypass the Senate confirmation process and block Biden's judicial appointments? Can you imagine if that would happen if the shoe was on the other foot?
No, I can't imagine.
You can't agree with that.
I can't agree with that.
No.
Listen, I would hope that that people would be more tempered, okay? And I'm choosing my words carefully.
Yes.
More tempered in their thought process.
Yes.
Because, look, the Democratic Party has always said that we are fighting for democracy. We are fighting for constitutional values. The ACLU, everybody's fighting for democracy and civil liberties, okay? How offensive has it been to see that democracy and civil liberties and procedure and our constitutional values has been completely eradicated?
Well, what does it say to you that President-elect Trump says to Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo, no need to apply, you criticize me, you shouldn't have done what you did, and so therefore you're not even considered?
See, I disagree with you on that. I absolutely disagree with you on that.
I just made a statement. I didn't take a position one way or the other. I'm just raising a question.
I think that, honestly, that this was about a populist issue. Look, it's no big secret that Nikki Haley loves the military-industrial complex along with Mike Pompeo. These are not secrets, okay? And at the end of the day, I think this is Donald Trump carrying out his promises.
But why do you have to say it? Why can't you just do it quietly and not give a reason for it?
Because I think he's under pressure to explain.
But he's the president.
He is the president. But
Everybody see him as fearless. He does what he wants to do.
I think he does what he wants to do, but he was elected as a populist president. So if he's elected as a populist president, yes, you still do have to provide that justification.
How do we keep him from being petty, divisive, and how does he become more magnanimous?
Look, I think he is a magnanimous person. I think he is absolutely magnanimous. I think what you're seeing is being viewed as pettiness because by the powers that be that want to create it as a pettiness. I view it as I was elected to protect the people, the American people. Look, 312 electoral votes. He won the popular election, and at the end of the day...
You and I are not going to argue on that, but we will pivot to this. What would you like to see the former president do better in his last gunfight as president of the United States?
Look, peace in the Middle East, I would love to see him expand the peace between Israel and Lebanon. I would love to see him expand the peace to, really take that Abraham Accords that he built and build on that. As far as the Department of Justice, I'd like to see him fumigate the whole 7th floor.
Before we get to the policy, what would you like to see him improve with his own character?
Look, I'm a trial lawyer, so I've got very thick skin.
But many Americans don't.
Many Americans don't, and I think if, maybe temper, just a little bit temper. Look, when you're a businessman, and especially a New York businessman, you don't have the luxury of being politically correct. You are savage. You are
savage.
You are absolute. You have to engage in a level of savagery to succeed in New York. New York.
But you also need humility.
You do need humility, but at the end, look, I mean, he's got the goods to back it up. Nobody could disagree that Donald Trump did not create that New York skyline. Nobody could disagree with that.
But let me tell you something. The Donald Trump today, he's 78 years old. That campaign took a toll on him. It took a toll on you and I by just watching it.
Absolutely. It took a toll on me, and I only had one state to
That's
take
hard
care
work.
of. It is.
It's hard work.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's 78 years old, but I have to tell you, he's 78 going on 60. I mean, you have to see that. Look, there's 78 and there's 78. He's 78 going on 60, so I think he's got much more.
Finally, will the media give Melania Trump the respect she deserves?
I hope so.
She was very dismissed in the first term.
She was completely marginalized. Look, she's a beautiful, beautiful woman.
Yes.
Other than the physical appearance, she tried so hard to capture legitimacy with the media. And I think at the end of the day, the more they marginalized her, the more she realized, well, I don't need the media to marginalize me, so I'm just going to keep on doing what I do best, which I'm looking forward to see what she brings to the table in the next 4 years.
Your final thoughts in about 30 seconds? This has been a joy talking to you, by the way.
And it's been a great being on here. Nevada, we are the silver state. We are battle born, and we were born to battle. And I think the Nevada GOP definitely delivered, like I said. But let's not forget that with everything that the Nevada GOP has managed to deliver in Nevada, it's the hand of God that delivered everything.
Amen. That saved our president from assassin's
It is
blood.
the hand
Love
of
God.
God.
I give you,
and,
yes.
And that's what I say. I said it once, and I'll say it again. The hand of God delivered Nevada.
Sigal Chattah, Dr. Ben Carson, this fine crew here at NBC in Las Vegas, Nevada. Greg Massani, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall. It has been my real distinct pleasure. I'm Armstrong Williams.